Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, frequent flyers. Thank you for joining us today in the lounge. Today, I have a good friend of mine, Kim Kish, and we are going to be talking about the secret powers of having an unconventional career path. Now, Kim and I had been kind of fangirling each other online for a little while before we met in person last year at an aviation event. We were both in the line for the Embry Riddle networking hour, and we turned around and saw each other like, oh my gosh. And it was really exciting. We love to celebrate women in aviation. We love to celebrate women in corporate aviation. And we are here today to dive into the unconventional path Kim had to becoming a pilot and why success is not about what you accomplish in your life, but it's about who you inspire. And Kim, you certainly inspire me. So thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I am so excited. I feel like today's conversations are just going to be inspirational to everyone, hopefully.
Yes, absolutely. Being that spark for others often comes when we're not even trying, when we're just being ourselves and we're communicating. And that's why I like to do this podcast very conversationally and bring on guests from all different perspectives of business aviation. And it's actually I had a pilot on a couple weeks ago, and we dove into his transition from military pilot life into becoming an airline pilot and then a business aviation pilot. And so that was quite an interesting perspective. But definitely your story is quite unique. We have here in the show notes that you actually started to learn to fly with your dad. He was your
Mhm.
first flight instructor. But the short version is that he told you you wouldn't be good enough to be a pilot. And so you proved him wrong, which I was
Yes.
like, yes, atta girl. That is what we do. So tell me more about that. Let's dive in.
Yeah, absolutely. Growing up, aviation was always in my family because of my dad, and we had a share in a Cherokee Six. So, a flying club where there's a couple other members who buy into it.
Yeah.
And we would do these joint family vacations from New York to Cape Cod and other locations. And, I was only about 6 or 8. So I thought we were the weird family because we would take this flying, vibrating machine across and everyone else would take their cars and drive. So not
Right.
realizing what an absolute privilege it was. I'm like, we are the weird family. Like, why can't I just watch DVDs in the car with my friends while they caravan? Like, we're the first ones to get there. We're the last ones to leave. I don't understand it. So I actually kind of took it for granted growing up. But then when I was 15, I remember it like yesterday. My dad and I are sitting on the couch. And granted, he is not a sports guy. He won't sit and watch football games on Sunday. He's gonna watch the History Channel, how it's made, Ice Road Truckers, all of those kinds of shows.
Okay.
So we're watching the History Channel, and it's about World War II. And so aviation, we all know, was crucial to that war. And I remember turning to him and saying, Dad, this is really cool. I really like airplanes. I want to learn more. And he's like, I'm a flight instructor. I can teach you how to fly. So again, I'm 15. So I'm like, ew, my dad? No way. Oh my
Right.
God. No, I'd rather hang out
Really?
with my friends.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he knows exactly what buttons to push. I am very competitive. So he said, well, that's fine because by the time you ever become a pilot, I'll be anointed Pope. So he told me I couldn't do it. He told me it would never happen. So I turned to him and said, "All right, old man, let's do it. Teach me how to fly."
I love it. There was some strategic thought that definitely went into that. And I
Yeah,
can
he's not
totally
as bad
see.
as it seems.
No, but definitely what a hook, right? What a
Yeah.
way to tell people that that's how you started your career. At first, I was like, man, I need to meet this Mr. Kish, and I need to have a conversation. But no, that is definitely something that I would have probably experienced in my life as well. So I love that you were able to turn that around. And so tell us a little bit more about what it was like learning at 15 how to fly. When did you solo? And then at what point did you realize, I think I want to do this for my career?
Yeah. So it was one of those where very casually my dad and I would go up. So at the time, he actually co-owned a very small flight school in upstate New York. So because of that, I again was very lucky and was able to do these maintenance flights with him, like whenever the airplane needed to go somewhere. And the flight school was primarily Cirruses. They had a Beechcraft skipper and a couple other things, but I would get to fly these Cirruses all around New York, and that's when it hit me, flying around with him, going, you get paid to do this? Like, here I am thinking I would happily pay someone to do this. So I think that's when it hit me at a very young age. I went, oh my God, if I can get paid to do something I like and not sit behind a desk. And I remember in high school, we're all thinking like, what do you want to do? Where do you want to go to college? And thinking, oh my God, after you graduate college, you just get a job, and Monday through Friday, you work until dinner time, you come home, eat dinner, go to bed, and then you do
Yeah.
it all over again, and then you have 2 days. And that really did not resonate with me. So again, very early on, I knew I did not want a conventional 9 to 5 job. And I think for me, it just felt very wholesome that everything clicked, that I liked flying, that it gave me that unconventional schedule. So I was very fortunate that I knew what I wanted to do at a young age.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So again, I feel very fortunate for that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It is kind of funny that we ask people in high school, like, hey, pick the thing that you're going to do for the rest of your life and career. And that's actually no longer how our world works, right? Because there's a lot of career pivots. There's actually a new term in the dictionary called a slasher or being a slashie.
Hmm.
And that is, um, I'm a business owner slash podcast host slash speaker slash, and you can do accountant, write code, whatever it is that you're doing. But today's generation, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, they are going to live more of that lifestyle where it's going to be multiple things that they do and they're less defined by what they do. Whereas millennials and above, we're really still kind of coming out of that. My job is my identity. And in aviation, we know that that is often the case for many people.
I actually really love that. And, I'm almost a little jealous, and maybe I can actually fit into that category because,
Yeah.
for example, like I have my email signature as corporate pilot slash aviation professional because I personally feel like, yes, what I get paid to do is fly an airplane, but there's so much more that I do within aviation that maybe I don't get paid for, but I still consider it a passion and something that I want to do every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually a good point. A lot of people used to put on LinkedIn what their current job title is. And now we see different labels on there, right? And even personal labels, which is wonderful because we are not just the things that we do. We are much more holistic, and having those other passions and those other areas of nurturing and being involved at different, perspectives, different levels is what really allows you to be able to move laterally as well. There may come a time
Mhm.
where you don't want to get paid to fly. You just want to fly for fun and you want to do something else. And it may not even be in aviation, and that's totally okay. Most likely it will because I know you and you and I are very similar, and we'll always have one foot in this world. But I really love that being able to identify yourself outside of the things you do and identify who you are is a much more powerful place to be. And it sounds like having this kind of unconventional path has also helped you to kind of naturally do that without realizing.
Yeah, absolutely. And also on that note of the unconventional path, you asked me when I soloed. And so because I wasn't in a typical flight school or, my dad didn't have these structured lessons with me, I didn't solo actually until I went to college when I was in Embry-Riddle. So I've
Okay.
only had probably like 20, 25 hours here and there between, 2 or 3 years. So I went to college and just pretty much started fresh because the 141 programs, they don't want you to come in halfway or even with some. But it was great. I was flying a different airplane. I moved, from a Cirrus and a Beechcraft Skipper to then the 172s that they have. And even then at Embry-Riddle, everyone's going, I want to fly for Delta. I want to fly for United. I want to go home and work for Emirates. And you're like, that's great. And I think I adopted that mentality just because you're in it.
Right.
Embry-Riddle is a place where you eat, sleep, breathe aviation. And for me, that's
Yeah.
what I needed. Because I'm this opportunist and or a slasher, I want to do all these other things. And I think being in a place where you are so focused on the task at hand grounded me. And it actually, I
Yeah.
think, made me successful going to school and achieving my goals. So um, but yeah, Embry-Riddle, it's, I know we've had this conversation before. I mean, I love the school. I'm grateful for my degree and everything it's given me, but they are very good at creating airline pilots. And obviously I am not one.
Yes. Right. So you were a bit of the outlier. in this case. And, same for me. I did a business degree with Embry-Riddle. I went to the Prescott campus. And, I love flying. But after about like 20 minutes, I'm kind of like, nah. Hmm. But you put me in a hangar and I'm like a little kid in a candy shop. I get really excited, right? So, everyone is different in the way that their passion shows up for the industry. And I don't think I ever heard the term business or corporate aviation in my schooling career. We had an FBO on the field where I think like Alaska Airlines maybe had like a regional jet that flew in, but also sometimes private jets. But I just kind of would be like, no, I don't know, whatever. That's a small airplane. I had no concept of what was actually happening or that that was a whole entire business and world behind the scenes, or maybe be like, oh, that's the FedEx plane or, that's a military aircraft. And so it just was never really talked about. And when we look at why, it's because schools look for placement, right? And
Mhm.
our industry is a small percentage of the wider aviation industry. So maybe the numbers of placement can't be so high, but I do want to recognize that they are starting to bring in more of our professionals, the regional professionals, right? This Friday, Sandy Nelson, am I going to get that correct? I just sent an email. We're doing Sandy Omen. Okay, I was close. She is career services at Embry-Riddle Daytona, and there's the Central Florida Business Aviation Day. I'm going to be speaking and hosting a panel. She's going to be coming and talking to students, and so obviously there is now more of a focus on business aviation. But back when we were in school, it was a little bit less so. So it's nice to see that
Mhm.
trend moving in that direction because I think they're seeing the success that can have, and because it is unconventional, it's easier sometimes to make waves in that space rather than getting lost in a sea of what everybody else is doing.
Yeah, and I think the industry can take a little bit of accountability for that as well. There's a little bit of purpose behind not advertising it because, I think the elephant in the room is that business aviation does get a bad rep for people who don't understand it or understand
Yes.
the opportunities out there. But then also now being in this side of the industry, I understand. We can't share everything. Like I
Right.
am very. Aware of what I share online now, of my location, of even the airplane,
Absolutely.
the paint scheme, what it looks like. So there is a lot of intentionality behind that we can't advertise it to everyone, but there is still easier ways to get in than it was years ago. The internships, the scholarships, and there may not be a clear pathway like there would be for the airlines, but there's an unconventional pathway. And I think that
Yeah.
works for the creatives of,
Yes.
I don't have tunnel vision. I don't know what my dream job is, but I'm open to opportunities. I'm willing to try. And I think that's the most important piece. And I think now knowing that if the universities lean into that, that is when more students will definitely be able to create their own path.
Yes, I love that you just said create your own path. That is literally the language that I have for the fireside panel that I'm running on Friday, because of this very thing. The yes and mentality comes from improv and theater. It's going with what's happening and then finding the next step to make it work for you, right? And so there are going to be people who are very structured, who want the certainty, who want the structure behind whatever they're doing, and then there's other people who will not thrive in that environment and they thrive more in that freedom of, yes, it might be uncertain in terms of what comes next, but there's
Mhm.
more freedom of choice and novelty and it's very dynamic. So really it's about understanding who you are as a person, where you thrive, and then making your choices from there. I think that's a really great point that we can definitely improve the narrative from the industry side as well as the school side.
Yeah, and that's a really good point because that ties into what I always tell my mentees of it's the road to the 1,000 hours, right? Everyone thinks I'm going to get a job either at 1,000 or 1,500 hours and I just have to make it to that point. And it's frustrating because everyone who's made it past that point knows what those feelings are like. And I
Yeah.
always say embrace the chaos. I know you're going to
Mm.
hear those words and go, "Oh my god, are you kidding me? That's your advice?" But I remember being in that time and going to conferences or being in the FBO and rubbing shoulders and talking to other people and being given these opportunities I never thought I would. And, opportunities that you don't apply for just as a job. These are opportunities that people give you because they see what you're doing, what you're capable of, and the potential you have. So that's why I always say embrace the chaos, because you never know what's going to happen. And I think, to your point, if you know who you are and you have an idea of what you want, people are going to lean into that. And it's going to be this symbiotic relationship of you're young, you're hungry, you want to work, and I want to give you an opportunity. So let's see how we can work together and do this. And a lot of the times the answer might be no, because it's not going to fulfill what you want to do in the future. It's going to slow you down. But I think if you are open to the idea, again, that chaos can really open a lot of doors. So buckle up and embrace it.
Yes. Life has its turbulence. Sometimes we know where it is, sometimes we can estimate where it is, and then there's the clear pockets of turbulence. So it's in that knowing and that awareness of yourself that you can start to make really intentional choices. And I'll add a caveat to your young, hungry phrase, young in mindset, meaning that you are more willing to be open. You're bringing the energy because you're taking care of yourself and you're showing up. That is what is going to get noticed. Because, like you said, we ran a mentorship webinar yesterday with NTBAA, STXBAA, and MBAA, two regional associations in Texas, and then the National Business Aviation Association, YoPro Council, which I know you do a lot of work with. And we talked about what is mentorship? Why is networking important? How do you find a mentor? How do you be a good mentee? And understanding that in this industry and in a lot of industries, not just in business aviation, when you show up as your full self, your authentic self, and you are, bringing your A game, literal positions will be created for you because people want that energy. They're like, Kim, I know you're not typed for this aircraft, but you are going to bring exactly what we need to this team. We're going to put you through type rating school. And that's what we see time and time again. Or, we've been kind of thinking about doing this. Now we've identified the person. Now we're going to actually make it happen. And these are the jobs that don't get advertised.
So that has happened 3 times in my career, actually. So it's funny you say that. I'm sitting here nodding, going, "Oh my God! Like, does she know all the times this has happened to me?" And briefly, I'll talk about them. So in high school, again, like I told the story about when I was 15. This is exactly the case, because I applied for an internship program through my high school. So the program was like a bigger internship program that they wanted you to apply to get into. And then once you were in it, then you were given an internship with their associating partners. But again, I was a black sheep. I was the only person who's ever wanted to do anything related to aviation. So they kind of told me, you're on your own. You have to go find your own internship. So I remember going to White Plains Airport, New York, and I went to a couple of flight schools and an FBO and asked, can you give me an internship? Can you create something for me? So that one, I think I really made the opportunity, having being in this program. And I ended up at Millionaire, the FBO, and it was an incredible experience. And I, to this day, still say, I think I'm so appreciative of every other person who's in this industry because I worked at an FBO. I realized that even though I'm the pilot, the operation cannot run without every other person and their job. So that was the first opportunity. The second opportunity was post-college. And this is when I had this realization of, oh my God, I don't think I want to be Captain Kish of a major airline. I don't want to fly an airplane that 50,000 other people have flown and, quite frankly, probably have farted in. So that was just something I was not interested in, until I started volunteering for Women in Corporate Aviation, where I'm meeting these women who were like, oh, I just flew our brand new Gulfstream 550 around the world, and I did 3 Atlantic crossings this month. And I'm like, it's a brand new, shiny, expensive toy. I want in. So that's kind of the backstory that led me to being creative when applying for jobs. My end goal is to be a pilot, but I figured, how do I get there? And I started applying to jobs that were desk jobs. And long story short, I ended up interviewing for a position called a flight locator. So a dispatcher without the license for a charter company. And in the interview, the last question he said, okay, I just need to know, why don't you want to fly anymore? And I said, oh, no, 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 no. If I can be frank, I want to fly. And actually, here's my plan. I know student loans are going to kick in 6 months. I want a salary. I also want job experience in this side of the industry. So if you hire me and I get this job, I will find any way to fly on the side, whether that's getting my CFI or just renting an airplane with this now salary that I will be having. I'm willing to take those risks in order to build up my hours while building up a rapport with this company. I said, I see you have turboprop airplanes, you have light jets and mid-sized jets. If you have a rapport with me, I think it'll be easy for you to hire me as a pilot. And that's exactly what happened at the end of the interview. He said, we have a position for an SIC and we're willing to hire you as long as you also work in the office. So that was the second opportunity. And the third opportunity is the job I have now. I applied because honestly, someone told me to. A mentor said, hey, you're looking for a new job? I said, yeah. She sent me the application and I saw Gulfstream 550 captain, called her back and said, you were absolutely crazy. I have 800 hours. There's no way they'll take me. And I applied, and long story short, the first interview I thought was just an informal meet and greet. And so I'm cracking jokes. I'm talking to them pretty much exactly how I'm talking to you now. And I told the story about my dad. I'm telling all of these stories. And I said, I just love the Gulfstream aircraft. This is what I am. Like, this is who I am, essentially, was the conversation. And long story short, they said, we want to make this work. We want to hire someone younger who we can mentor and who has aspirations to stay in this industry. So we want to invest in you if you want to invest in us. And that's when it hit me, oh my gosh, you can create your own opportunities in this industry. And I think that's something that we have comparatively against the airlines. Sarah, I don't think I can hear you.
I put myself on mute so I could do something. See, live interviews, I do this on purpose because you can't edit real life. You can't cut out the silly things you do, and it's okay. You can keep going. This is so indicative of what our industry is and what it can be, and what you can do to really create your own experiences. You could have cut yourself out of the picture and just said, no, I won't apply because I'm not qualified. Whereas you just said yes. It was a little bit nerve-wracking. You showed up and it led to this incredible opportunity. People want to invest in others who are willing to invest in themselves, whether that's a job, that's a mentor, that's a relationship of any kind, a friendship. Nobody likes to be friends with someone who only takes and who doesn't also give back, or who doesn't show up when you need them. And it's only whenever they need something they call you, right? It's the same thing here. And all of my opportunities, except for the very first one, that I ever applied on, like, Eagle Hire from Embry Riddle. I was like, what's this? It was like a technical records role in Scottsdale for Jet Edge 1.0 way back before they became the Jet Edge of today. And I was like, what is this? I don't even know. Here's my CV. And they called me and they're like, we want to fly you out to LA. And I was like, yeah, okay, you can fly me to LA, right? And my whole world was like blown open of, oh my gosh, what is this amazing industry? Look at the things that we can do. After that point, though, every single opportunity I had was because someone made an introduction, someone sent me something, or I was literally invited to the role and, had the interview with the senior exec team, and then it went. But very much like you, most of those conversations I thought were just coffee chats. We're just like, hey, I'm getting to know you. I'm just telling you what I'm looking for, what I'm interested in. And then 3 of the job offers I received in Hong Kong when I first went there were actually from the coffee chats, not from the formal interviews. So you can create your own interview process if you approach it this way. And if you show up and are honest about, how you want to contribute.
Yeah. And this is why I think now, looking back, I have a little bit of beef with the word networking, because there's this stigma of, okay, we're going to meet, it's going to be professional, we're going to shake hands and we're going to exchange information. And then we're also going to exchange goods. I'm going to get something from you and you're going to get something from me.
Right.
Where that is, it's just not genuine.
No.
And again, something I always tell people is create those genuine friendships. And I think that's when it becomes more organic.
Yeah.
And you're not looking to get something from someone. You're simply just being who you are and creating those
Yeah.
friendships, and then you build your network around that.
Absolutely. It's like a garden, right? You have to nurture
Yes.
and cultivate those relationships, and it's about like who sparks you up. I saw Tracy
Yes.
comment earlier. Every time I see her, we're like we
Oh, I
both got the
love
Vans
Tracy.
on. Every time we see each other, our Fab Five group, all of these people. There's certain people in the
Yes.
industry that when you see them, you turn on, and when you turn on, that's when everybody else begins to notice as well. So seek out those types of relationships. Focus on what you can give. Yesterday, I gave the analogy of it's like an ATM.
Mm.
You can't just draw on your network all the time and be like, gimme, gimme, gimme. You have to
Mm.
invest your time, your energy, your willingness to also assist them or give feedback, just jump on a phone call. And then when the time is right and you do need to call for support, the industry will be there for you. I can't tell how many times I've seen people in our network post on LinkedIn saying, I lost my job today, still really good friends at, blah, blah, blah. And then like 2 weeks later, they have another job because the whole industry like rallied and was like, oh my gosh, there's this. Let me introduce you to this person. Do you know this person? This is open. And that's what can happen when you invest in relationships, not in
Mhm.
transactions. If you want to do transactions, go be like a financial broker or something. Go work on Wall Street.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
you want to
Yes.
be relationships. That's how this industry runs. And that's the most important thing.
I certainly agree with that.
Yeah. So Kim, I'd love to know, when I went to Embry-Riddle, I was one of 10, one female and 10 students. So the numbers were really low. I think the statistics are a little bit different now, especially in Daytona's bigger campus. That was, my God, that was like 16 years ago. What? When did that happen? Anyways,
I know. What
uh,
is
what,
time?
what would, yeah, time is, I have a whole thing about that. As time is alternate dimension. We don't understand time. But what has it been like being a female pilot and specifically in business aviation? I'd like to just help our audience, female pilots out there, and also male pilots. What is that experience like so that we can encourage other women to go down this path and also let our male counterparts know some of the things they may not even be aware of and how we can start to work better together?
Yeah, absolutely. I love this question because I think I have a little bit of a unique take on it where I think coming into the industry, a lot of people warned me of, you're going to face a lot of sexism, people aren't going to be welcoming to you. And I didn't necessarily feel that way because of my gender. I actually felt it more because of my age.
Hmm.
Especially working for a charter company at 21 years old, I looked young and it was obvious, the amount of people who would step on the airplane and say, so do you want to be a pilot one day too? And I'm like, did you think I was a bad flight attendant? I didn't even offer you water.
This is your captain speaking.
Yes. So it was more of it's more of an ignorance, I think. So
Yeah.
I would warn specifically females, but also just younger generations stepping into their first job in the industry of be prepared for the comments. And that I
Mhm.
think I can speak to, especially as a female, where sometimes you get the comments of, you just got this job because you're a girl, or you haven't earned this. And I think that leads more towards the age than the gender.
Yeah.
Um, and you just have to have good comebacks. Sometimes it's with humor. And other times, I've learned to say, well, but did you ask?
Right.
Did you ask for this opportunity? Because I did, and they said yes.
Right.
And that I think is, again, really just what we talked about of creating those opportunities. Um, yeah, so I don't think it's as scary as it used to be, thankfully. There are definitely a lot of changes we can make. And the biggest thing I would say is normalize it. Um, a lot of the times we step even on an airline and people are like, oh, a female pilot. Oh my gosh. And I love the energy. I love that it makes people excited and happy. But at the same time, it's almost counterintuitive because Now we're ostracizing female pilots by saying, it's an astonishing thing that's happening. Oh my gosh, congratulations. And you're like,
Right.
congratulations for what?
Right.
I've graduated, I got my certificates. That was years ago. So normalizing it, making it an everyday thing. And a great example I have is one of our executives I was flying. She talked about her kids and she did the same thing. She's like, we're on an airline. We had 2 female pilots. And I said, oh, kids, can you believe it? We have 2 female pilots. And she's like, they didn't even take their headphones off. They were like,
Yeah.
can girls not
Oh,
fly?
whatever. Yeah.
It was normal to them. And that's when she
Right.
said, oh my God, I realized what I did. I
Yeah.
realized that I made it not normal.
Yeah.
So, and I really have to give a big shout out to my flight department, because when I came in, I think they knew it wasn't normal, since I was one of the first female hired. So they were like, well, what can we do to help? And they were willing to have those kind of awkward conversations of like, do you need a new uniform? Like, does the uniform
Yeah.
work for you?
Awesome.
How can you adjust it? And they were like, when we're in a room together, how do you want to be addressed? Is it too awkward to say guys and gals? If I say you guys, is that offensive? And it's those little things that I think people are like, oh, it's not a big deal. And no, maybe it may not be a big deal, but by addressing it, you're just taking away the awkwardness of assuming. It's
Yeah.
just better to ask and to figure it out. And for me, I'm a New Yorker, so I say, well, I don't say y'all, so it's either y'all or you guys. So I'm a you guys.
Right. Well, when you make assumptions, then I like to have this little math equation, because that's exactly what happens, right? When you
Yep.
assume you know what somebody wants, how they're going to be motivated, what's going to work for them, what's not, what pronoun they want, whatever it is, you may not think it's important, but if it's important to the other person, that is going to be the difference between building that relationship so that that person has longevity within your organization, there's cultural fit, alignment, everything, and then them walking because you didn't take the time to ask a simple question, right? And the whole golden rule we learned in kindergarten, treat others as you want to be treated.
Yeah.
Incorrect. Treat others as they want to be treated,
Yes.
because the way I want to be treated is probably very different to how you want to be treated. And if let's say you're an introvert, I'm an extrovert. If I treat you like an extrovert, you're going to want to run and hide from me. You're not going to enjoy that experience at all. I need to learn to tone it down and connect with you differently, and maybe have
Mm-hmm.
certain conversations in private, or make sure that I'm checking in with you at an event so that you're getting your social recharge time, so that when you do go to the networking event or the cocktail hour, whatever it is, or you're on stage, you can perform at your best and you feel fully supported. So it is important. But, like you said, we're still of that generation where it was not normal. So we almost get excited and want to celebrate and make a big deal out of it. Whereas the younger generations, they're just like, yeah, that's a thing, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
probably in the future, these driverless car things that are happening, we have a lot here in Austin, right? Like, I wouldn't be surprised if at some point in the future, and I'm not saying like 10 years from now, but whenever that is, if a kid got into a car and there's a human, they'd be like, whoa, when,
Look at this old school car.
where did this car come from? Can it even run? Are you safe to drive? I think I'd rather have the computer, right? So
Yeah.
mindsets will always shift, but it's very interesting to highlight and acknowledge our own inherent biases that we will all have, because we will all have it. I mean, I've started going to places and going, oh my God, everybody here is like 16. How did they even get let into this bar?
Yeah.
Like that
Yeah.
started to happen. They're probably 22, and that's how people were looking at us at that age. And so we just have to understand that's the natural process. But how can we build our awareness to lower
Mm-hmm.
that so that we can find the bridge that we'll connect on?
And I think on that note too, to tie it back to the question you asked about being a female in this industry, again, I think the overall point is the ignorance, but people will say comments with their sense of humor, and that
Right.
may not be yours. So
Yes.
there was a lot of jokes that people thought, well, instead of asking, let me make a joke about it, and that will loosen up the tension. And that does not always land right.
No,
So
pun
I think
intended.
the part is you will have a very successful career in this industry, knowing that a lot of things are said out of ignorance about airplanes, about the pilots, about the
Right.
culture, and you just kind of have to let them go. And I think again, it's the same point of if you give something too much energy and attention, it's only going to build it.
Right.
So a lot of those
Absolutely.
comments are said, and I've learned to just sit there and go, and it's a little awkward, but they know, oh my God, that was awkward.
Right. They'll learn from that. And so just
Yeah.
breathing, literally just
Yeah.
not saying anything, you can choose to have no response. You don't always have to have a response or an opinion. That's a Stoic philosophy as well. And so the more you can get comfortable in that discomfort, it's a little awkward, but you
Hmm.
just you're kind, you're authentic, and you just smile and maybe raise an eyebrow, and that other person will go, "Oh, okay, that wasn't maybe the right thing to say." And that might open the door for a better conversation rather than going off on them or telling them what's what, right? We have to also remember that it's not often said out of maliciousness. It
Yeah.
is just simply unawareness. And so we can all play a part in improving that. And I think that is where, that community and being a part of organizations like Women in Corporate Aviation, there's men in that organization, there's men and women
Hmm.
in aviation, right? We've got all sorts of different associations where we can go and learn from the people that are in our industry and understand what their world is like, right? What is it like on their side of the experience so that we can better ourselves and make that interaction more smooth? And that's going to help, similar to what you did in the beginning. You said, I want to learn what it's like to be a dispatcher. I want to know what it's like to be at the FBO. Because when you have the understanding of that entire ecosystem, that's where you can start to understand, hey, this person's not trying to be a jerk. Their
Hmm.
mission is to do this. They need that permit before the permit office closes. They don't care about my catering order for 10 days from now. Got it. Okay, I'm going to come back, right? And we can start to have much better conversations and relationships.
I agree. And, I think what we talked about, it was a lot of the negative you find in the industry. And to acknowledge the positive, I think there are a lot of
Yeah.
people out there, again, their intention is good and maybe it didn't land right. But having that side conversation saying, hey, thanks for acknowledging that.
Yeah.
Again, normalizing is not ignoring it.
Right.
Normalizing is getting comfortable with it. So being
Yeah.
able to say, hey, how do you like to be addressed?
Right.
And saying, hey, thank you for acknowledging that. I really appreciate that. You made me feel very welcomed. And I think sometimes it is kind of hard to compliment people, but people really do appreciate it. Yes, be curious. Oh my gosh, you're gonna love what I have to say later.
Amazing. Yes. Yeah, being curious, expressing gratitude when someone makes you feel a certain way, when they mentored you, when they give you a piece of advice and it worked, like go and tell that person, celebrate it. We also need to learn how to get comfortable receiving compliments. There's often a tendency to, oh, no, 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 it was no big deal. Or no, that's just, it's for everybody. Like, receive the compliment. Learn to just take a deep breath and say, thank you. That's all you need to say. You don't need to
Yep.
justify. You don't need to, quantify anything like that. So no matter what your gender is, or your age, that is something we can all get better at is learning how to receive compliments and acknowledge ourselves for the work that we're doing instead of thinking that we're not enough. Because that's certainly a millennial Gen X kind of mindset that's there. And it exists through all different phases of life. Every time you start a new job, you're new, you're learning, you're figuring out the ecosystem of that organization, the relationships, what's the flow of work here? And it's a little uncomfortable. And so we start to kind of revert to some of these old patterns. But the more we can be curious, the more we ask questions, share our intentions, that's going to be where we find the real gold in our career paths. And those pivots are going to be more easy to spot, right? They're not going to
Hmm.
be so murky off in the side somewhere.
I agree.
Yeah, I love that. Now, with community outreach and advocacy, I know you do a lot of work with YoPro Council. There's something coming up in June. You manage the memberships with Women in Corp Aviation. I'm a member of both organizations. They're really great. Tell us a little bit more about how this secret sauce has really also helped, like, not only expand and enhance your career, but your experience in in just the way that you find the entire industry, because there are so many cool things
Mm.
happening right now, and so much more focus with the YoPro Council. I'd love to hear a little bit more about what's going on there and how that's been the secret sauce for you.
Absolutely. I think there's a saying, and I may butcher this, but it's something about like, you are a combination of the five people you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
And I fully believe there's so much power in the people you surround yourself with. And I think in my personal life, but also in my career life, um, I have been very fortunate with the people I surround myself with. So like growing up and growing through college, I was um, working a lot with WCA on more on the social media side. So I was constantly talking to other people, and having those women as mentors was transformative. Being able to have an inside scoop on the industry before entering it was absolutely crucial for me. And I think now, looking at where I am in my career, having the YoPro Council and having my peers, people of my own age, being able to bounce off ideas and having our energy radiate off each other has been tremendous. And I think that is a lot of the reason of why I stay so determined and I want to stay futuristic within the industry. So really it's who you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
And a lot of my friends on the YoPro Council are my friends in real life. You
Yeah.
know, Julia Harrington and I call each other probably once a day.
Yes.
So it's one of those where I think that kind of goes back to my point about the networking as well. Of when you have these genuine relationships, you get so much more out if it rather than just a transaction. You get a support system and you get people you can rely on and talk with, and that definitely is huge.
Beautiful. I love that. And yeah, I mean, Julia, she saw I was in Chicago and she messaged me and she's like, "Oh my gosh, what are you doing here? How long are you here?" And then we all ended up having brunch together one day. And
Yeah.
so that's the beauty as well of aviation, because we do travel a lot and you build these really powerful friendships. And so while you might not live in the same place, and you can still have those opportunities to see each other around events, around your personal travel, and that's a really fun experience. Julia said, "Hi, friends, feeling the love."
Oh my God, she's the
Thank you
best.
for being here live with us, Julia. Um, I see a message that someone's LinkedIn live broadcasting stopped. Hopefully, we're still live there. But it's showing good on my side. Anyone else having any issues, you can pop over to YouTube or Facebook. Just wanted to mention that. All right, Kim, creativity and opportunity. We've touched on this a little bit because these unconventional paths. I wanted to just go back to that. Just
Mhm.
asking, like
Yeah.
the things you can get out of life. I can't tell you how many cool experiences I've had just because I've asked the
Yeah.
question. Have you experienced this? Let's talk about your personal life also. Do you apply the same philosophy to your personal life? And what are some of the experiences you might have had there that you can share with us?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm an extrovert, if it wasn't obvious. I love people. And I even find that sometimes if I spend too much time alone, it gets to me. I get into this funk. And some days, I just want to be a hermit. And it's until I get a phone call or, I reach out or someone else reaches out and gives me plans and I get to be around people. It's like I am completely energized again. So in my personal life, I think being curious, it's a running joke, but it's also very true. One of my hobbies is talking to strangers.
I love that.
The amount of times, in the boarding line, in a, getting on a commercial flight, I make friends, or when we're traveling, talking or sitting at the bar and talking to the bartender, things like
Yeah.
that. I think it gives you a better understanding of people and where they come from. And that is something I am really working on. I think it's taken me years to realize how deep empathy is and what it
Mm.
is and why we need it. So when I sit down and reflect on myself, I say, how can I be more empathetic? And I think talking to other people and understanding and listening to other people's stories is really helping.
Yeah, I love that. There's also a great book by Malcolm Gladwell called Talking to Strangers. I don't know if you've ever read it.
I
Um,
haven't.
I think you would really enjoy it. And he goes into more of why this works for us, what we can gain out of it. Malcolm Gladwell is an excellent author. But yes, being curious, asking the questions. I talked to someone after base last year that I was sitting next to. Um, and turns out he and I have a lot in common. He told me all about, like, he's a psychology professor, now retired. He wrote this book called Motivational Interviewing, which Chuck brought up on the mentorship call yesterday. Um, and his son is a corporate jet pilot. I was like, if I would have just sat here and ignored him, I would have never learned any of these things. And instead, I had a very exciting conversation for about 45 minutes. Him and his wife were so cute. They were celebrating like 60 years of marriage or something, and it was just so much fun, right? So I love that. And, understanding other people's point of view, even if you don't agree with it, and being curious about it is what helps you connect better with others instead of leaping to conclusions, which, as we know, can often backfire for us.
Absolutely. And to your point also about being creative, I read a book called The Comfort Crisis, I think
Comfort.
by Michael Easter. It was fantastic. And I think that was really transformative for my mindset as well, because the overall point is finding comfort in discomfort,
Mm,
realizing that in order to get better in whatever aspect that is, it's living in that zone of discomfort. And for me, athletics has always been in my life. I've always been an active person, but it wasn't until I realized how much goals really affect me. If I don't have a goal, I plateau. And again, I think that's when I kind of fall back into that hermit that I want to be if I'm not around people. So a goal for myself this year was to try to join as many social groups within athletics that I could. So, for example, like I just joined a running group and I'm addicted. I'm like, how many other running groups can I join? Like, who else can I
yeah.
run with? And I don't really like running that much. I'll be completely honest. It's fun. And for me, it's like, I got to get past mile 3 in order to get a runner's high. And it's like, I don't always want to run more than 3 miles.
Right.
So it's finding that uh, discomfort, but getting comfortable in it and realizing that there's
Yeah.
so much more beyond maybe the one goal you set out to do. So if your goal is to run, maybe there's way more behind that. Actually, I know there's way more behind that. Of you can
Yes.
meet more people, you can go to different places, you can explore new neighborhoods, whatever that may be. And so I think when you have this creative mindset and you're open to being creative, you will find that even if you set one goal, you're gonna come out with 11.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that it said reclaim your wild, happy, and healthy self, because we do need to tap back into that wildness of ourselves, and allow ourselves to explore, to play more, right? I actually have, like, over my computer screen, so I can look at it every single day. It says architect the present moment. And I also have play with, explore. And that is just the reminder. So every day I'm looking at this, play is so important for us as
Mm-hmm.
children when we're developing, but there's a reason all these apps are gamified, because it gets us hooked. We have fun, right? And so I love that, you didn't tie it to just running, it was athletics. And then you found these different groups, and you're probably meeting some really interesting people in these
Yeah.
places.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Amazing. I've actually just added the comfort crisis to my Amazon cart.
You're
It's
gonna love it. It's
I'm so
great. It's so
excited.
interesting.
Awesome. Amazing. Yes. And with creativity too, a lot of times people in our industry, they tend to think that they're not creative, right?
Hmm.
Because, a lot of us, if we're in aviation, particularly if you're a pilot or an engineer, you might be more left brain, very kind of, here's my checklist, linear, logical thinker, and very strategic in that way. But that doesn't mean you're not creative. When you're solving a problem, you're using your creativity skills, right? And very
Mhm.
often these other pursuits, whether it's at athletics, whether it's art jamming, poetry slam, any of these things, that allows you to take these seemingly like random dots and all of a sudden start to make a whole picture, because your brain operates differently. And so all of a sudden, what you didn't see as a connection before, you can see. So I think that's
Mhm.
really useful. Thank you for highlighting that for people to consider.
Yeah, and I think for people who say like, "Oh, I'm not creative," but maybe they're goal hunters, I have looked forward to this every single year, and it's something that I think I might want to do more than once a year. But come the new year, I sit and I vision board. And at first I'm
Mhm.
like, oh God, this is so nerdy. But now I'm like, it's so much fun. I get to collect these magazines throughout the year. And then at the end of the year, I go through and I cut out pictures that I like from it. And it's been so much fun. And it's a way to get creative. I feel like a kid again. I'm using scissors and glue sticks and glitter and just creating what I want my year to look like in ways that it's outside of my brain. Um, and it also in a way feels very relatable because they're coming from magazines where I go, oh my God, like other brands or other people are thinking similarly to how I am, and I can relate to them and they can relate to me.
I love that. Yeah, I actually have on my phone screensaver there, my little vision board. I use Canva. So if you're not don't want to collect magazines and do it manually, that's another way you can do it is have these images that you like that you save and you put them in there. And again, it's just that reminder of like, oh, yes, that's important to me. And speaking of vision boarding, where you put your attention, where your
Mhm.
energy goes, energy flows. Now, that might sound a little woo woo crap to some people. That's okay. What it's about is if you focus your energy on anything, right? I'm going to spend 30 minutes a day on Spanish lessons. I'm going to focus 30 minutes a day writing poetry. I'm going to focus 30 minutes a day being outside. You get benefits. We can all acknowledge that, right? Over time, we're going to start to see results. Because you're focused on that, you're making the time for it, you actually do it, you do get the results. It's the same thing. If you focus your time and energy on the things that you desire, you'll start to notice them because our brains have something called a reticular activating system,
Mm.
RAS. You can Google it, learn all about it. But basically, this is why when you buy a red car, all of a sudden, red sports car, all of a sudden, you notice all the other red sports cars on the road. Or you break your ankle, all of a sudden, you notice everybody else with a broken ankle. Those people were always there. Those cars were always there. You just didn't notice them, right?
Mm.
And so this is how you can actually train your brain to start looking for the things that you do want so that if you spot the opportunity, it happens. We were talking about this before we went live about scuba diving, right? So part of my
Yes.
vision board process this year was I miss scuba diving. I want to scuba dive more this year. I want to go on a scuba dive holiday, go to places I haven't been before. I'm going to tell my mom I want a scuba dive watch for my birthday, and she can like coordinate with other family members, maybe. I'm just going to plant the seed. And literally, like 2 weeks later, I got this message that this all expenses paid dive holiday I paid for in April of 2020 was supposed to go on the trip, clearly did not, is now saying I can go until June or July of this year. So now I'm going diving. So, it was all of a sudden now I'm putting it out there that this is what I want. Talking about scuba diving to people. I'm getting recommendations about what equipment to get. Oh, hey, here's a deal. You should do this. Or here, I saw this link and thought of you. And that's the same thing that can happen in the workspace. So that creativity applies in your personal goals as well as your professional goals.
I think it makes it a lot easier too, right? Like I can think of a couple different scenarios. The YoPro counselor for one.
Yeah.
These are my peers. These are people who also want to succeed in their career. And when I'm in that plateau, I'm going, oh my God, if they can do it, I can do it. And it's that motivation and that support
The ripple
system.
effect.
And then for a running group, I've realized, well, maybe I do like running. I just don't like running alone. So
Yeah.
surrounding yourself with those motivating people who want to do it and that makes you want to do it as well. And I saw Amanda commented the law of attraction, and it really is.
Yeah. It is. It's really interesting when you start to play with it. But I'll give you an example. I talked to Ed Bolin after I met Cyan Proctor at Leadership last year. No, actually, excuse me. I talked to him after Michelle Mace Kern's keynote at SDC.
Mm.
And she had run us through an exercise about what's the one kind of goal we put on the shelf when we were little. Before she even finished her sentence, in my brain, it was like space. I'm obsessed with space. For those of you who know me, you know that that's a large part of who I am. And I had this conversation with Ed. And then, like, later at the YoPro Council, someone's talking to me. They're like, Ed told me about your conversation. I used to work in aerospace. And then we had a whole conversation. And so when you put it out there, when you tell people that that's what you love or that's your dream job or your dream holiday, when it comes across their sphere, they're going to go, oh my gosh, I have to call Kim. I have to call Sarah. I have to call Mike. They need to know about this. Right. And so that's how you can draw that towards you and become aware of things that maybe normally you wouldn't notice or recognize or even have access to.
Okay, I love this so much because I don't know where I learned this, but someone said have an elevator speech. So I created an elevator speech, and as cheesy and weird as it sounds, I would practice this in the mirror in my dorm room. I'd be like, "Hi, my name is Kim, and this is what I want to do." And I would have 2 to 3 sentences. That was my elevator speech. Like, let's say if I went to NBAA or I went to base and I was in the elevator with Ed Bolin, what would I say? And I still remember it. I can recite it in my sleep backwards in a different language. I would say, "Hi, my name is Kim Kish. I am currently a student at Embry-Riddle. What I wanted, my goals are to fly a Gulfstream around the world. I want to be CAM certified through NBAA, and I want to be the director of safety or chief pilot of a Part 91 or 135 operation." And that's what I would do. And anyone with a pair of ears, I would tell that to.
Yes.
And it's funny now too, the people I would say that to have come back to me and said, "You're doing what you said you would do." And I'm
Yeah.
like, I know, it's crazy. It's that manifestation. But I think it's not really the power of manifesting, it's the power of believing in yourself. And when you say it, and as cheesy as it sounds, when you say it in the mirror and say it to yourself, you believe in yourself. And
Yeah.
that's where the power comes.
Well, and what it also does is it informs people of what you're looking for. People
Mm-hmm.
don't know what to help you with if you haven't told them. So that when you're clear with the ask or with the intention, then they're going to be doing something and you're going to pop up. Like I get messages all the time with photos of the word pivot. It is like burned in people's brains now, Sarah the pivoter, right? And so anytime they hear this word, they send me the link, the article, the picture. They tell me they were thinking about me, or they see something space related. And that leads to more connection. I get to engage with them more. And it also, people are sending me like, "Hey, did you know that, NASA's looking for this?" And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that's kind of like what I would love to do. That's cool." So now I get to investigate and see if that's aligned. And so by doing that, and also practicing in the mirror, you're practicing holding eye contact. That's very important. You can also record yourself. I do that as
Mm-hmm.
a speaker. I will record myself and watch it back. I know some of you are like, "Oh my God, no, like, I don't like the sound of my voice. Like, how can you do that?" I mean, in the beginning, of course, it was weird, but talk to any professional athlete. That's how they improve their game. They watch
Yep.
back the recording of the play. They watch back the golf swing, the lift, the handstand, whatever it is, so that they can see what might not be super solid and what they can improve. And so it's the same thing. That elevator pitch helps you tell others so they can also help cast the net and like bring that to you. And it's really cool because we are community creatures. We are
Mm-hmm.
designed to be that way. And it's really powerful when we tap into that nature of ours.
Absolutely.
Amazing. There's so many people who are saying this is like their favorite conversation. And I know we could
Aw.
probably keep on going for hours. But I do want to touch on the questions that I always like to ask my guests. So my first
Okay.
question is, Kim, what do you think your superpower is?
I have thought about this, I think, since you've asked me unofficially at base. You're like, "I always ask my guests this. I want you to be on the podcast." And I'm like, "Oh my God, she's going to ask me this question about my superpower." And we've had conversations about this before too, right? Where I think people are very hard on themselves.
Mm,
And yeah, I definitely hold myself to a certain standard. So I've sat and I thought about it and reflected. And I think my superpower is ultimately positivity.
mm,
And I say that because if I get to a scenario, a bad scenario, right, or something that hasn't happened the way I want it to, I will definitely have that freak out moment. I will probably complain and pout and throw myself a pity party. But once that is over and once I reach that hump and once I'm on that positivity train, I can't stop. And I think that's what keeps me motivated. And I think that's what gives me the grit because I can stop and say, "Man, that was a really horrible situation. But what did I learn? What happened? What
mm,
did that other person learn? Can I teach them something? Can they teach me something?" And again, I think it's that curiosity. I have to wonder, if this didn't happen, would I have remained stagnant? Would I have not learned anything? Um, and I think sometimes it can be annoying if someone is in that processing state and I'm going, "Oh, well, things could be so much worse. Think about what you're going to learn afterwards. think about what this is going to happen in the future. And another thing I love to tell my mentees is have a conversation resume, because you're only as strong as your hardest conversations. And this was the hardest pill to swallow as an adult, because you don't realize in your personal life, in your career, in every scenario, when you're checking out at the grocery store and you're getting like, they do something you don't want, you have to have this awkward conversation with someone. It happens everywhere. And so I think
Yeah.
at work, you build up that strength and you're like, I'm going to ask my boss for this, or I'm going to ask my manager for this. And then you have that conversation and you're on the other side of it. You go, oh my God, I can add that to my hard conversation resume, because the next time that happens, it's going to be easier. Or the next time a harder conversation is going to happen, I can rely on what I've learned or what I did or what I should have done from that conversation. And I think if you're a negative person or if you have a negative mindset, you may not ever get there. You may not ever have that reflection, period. That is something that I think comes with the positivity. So I know my mom, like if my mom's watching this, she's probably like, oh my God, Kim is the biggest complainer. What is she talking about, this positivity? So I do want to acknowledge that it's taken me a long time to get here, and I still have a lot of work to do on it. But I realize I keep a lot of things in. So
Yes.
that's why I say, as long as I get to that hump,
Yep.
after I throw myself a pity party, then I can move past it. And I think that's helped me out a lot.
Beautiful. Yeah. And very often our weaknesses are tied to our strengths, right? Because I just had this conversation with my best friend when we were road tripping across the US, and we were going through like what are our strengths and what are the things we can improve on. And we've known each other 17 years. And his strength of being very organized and disciplined is also tied to the weakness of sometimes being too rigid, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I had the same thing, right? Very often the two are linked, because just by the nature of you get so strong in something, then we start to lose awareness of other things. But I also appreciate that you said you throw yourself this pity party and you go through the emotions, because we have to process the emotions. If you go straight to positivity, that's toxic positivity. That's
Yes.
masking. That's not real. And that's why we get the pendulum swing. This is not Legoland. Everything is awesome. That is not how it works. And that narrative is why we have a lot of very unhappy people, because they haven't fully processed their emotions. So go have the pity party, go to a rage room, cry, scream, complain that it's unfair. And then when you're on the other side of that, you'll be able to think more clearly, and you'll be able to
Mm-hmm.
find these crumbs of wisdom. What path do I follow? And my mentor, Anthony Cox with Bombardier, told me this: the glass is always refillable.
Mm.
So he's
Oh,
like,
I
I don't care.
love that.
Yeah. He's like, I don't care if you think that it's half empty or it's half full. It's always refillable. So I like to use this a lot. And I get some, smart ass students sometimes, or people who like to crack. Well, I broke my glass. Now what do I do? I'm like, well,
You
in
get a new
Japan,
one.
yeah, get it in Japan. They take gold and they
Yes.
fix the cracks, and they're like, it's smashed to pieces. I was like, well, guess what? You get to get a new glass. He's like, there's no glasses. I was like, you get to use your hand. And he was not really happy with me, but he's like, fair. I can use my hand. I was like, see, we got there in the end. It's just the
That
reframe.
is so funny. And I think for me, I'd be like, oh my God, my glass is cracked. I get to go shopping. I get to
Right.
pick out a new glass. I get to pick what color.
I
I
didn't
get to
like that glass
choose.
anymore anyway. I was ready for a new one, right?
Exactly.
But when we don't process the emotion, it's really hard to get there. So I also appreciate you mentioned that, respect where other people are in their process. Don't
Mm-hmm.
force this on them. They may not yet be ready to hear that. Let them go through the process. Be curious, help ask the questions that will get them there. And then when that emotional intensity has dissipated, then we can go to the lessons. Then we can start to take more practical steps. But we do have to go through
Completely
that
agree.
emotional process. The only way
Absolutely.
through is through.
Yeah.
Okay. Second question. Who's on your personal board of directors?
Yes. Oh man, this just came up the other day with my best friend, where she had asked me this question. And I was like, oh my God, we should pitch this and have a panel discussion. And she's like, wait, I can't take credit for it. She's like, this is a topic that's been going around. But first and foremost, I think her. We've known each other since second grade, and
Awesome.
is so soft and caring. And I think I can be very opposite of that. Maybe not the opposite of caring, but I can be very rushed and abrasive at times. And I can be impulsive. I know that. So, especially when I'm feeling anxious, I'm like, I just want to get something done. I want to choose something, have it come to fruition and forget about it. And I think she keeps me grounded in that way. So, and having someone outside of aviation, I think is really, really important, because you have that third party perspective to go, well, have you thought of this? Have you thought of this? And even though they're not an expert in that craft, they can still provide very knowledgeable expertise. So, and I think other acknowledgments that I probably don't have to talk about in great length are my parents. You know, having like my first mentors in my life would be on my board of directors for more of the adult things that you go, Mom, can you help me? You know, I'm 27, but I'm like, I'm still a little girl. Like, there's no way I'm an adult yet. No way. But again, I think like another shout out to Julia Harrington. I think she is definitely on my board of directors. And a common theme I've noticed in my life is, I think it stemmed from having an older brother. I was always friends with his friends, or always wanted to be, whether they were friends with me or not. But I've noticed a lot of my friends have always been older than me. So for example, my friend Kristen, we met because she was my mentor through WCA. And she made this joke when I moved to Chicago of like, well, now you're stuck with me and we're gonna be friends. And we are she's literally one of my best friends. So it's having those people who are a couple steps ahead of you, whether that's years or career steps. You can always learn from them. And so those are the people I really keep on my board of directors, of who are the people that are a couple steps ahead that I can keep chasing, but not in a competitive way, in more of the standard I hold to myself. So I think I could sit here and list out 25 people who are on my board of directors and why I go to them for certain reasons. But to keep it short and simple, I think that is pretty much my answer.
I love it. Thank you. And yes, the different perspectives, it's what keeps you rounded and whole and aware, right? Having the differing perspectives, the different age groups, the different industries, all of that is what helps us see what we can't see. Because sometimes when we're in the thick of it, you know, we can't see the forest through the trees because we're too much in the detail, too much in the weeds. So that's really powerful. And at 35, I also sometimes wonder if I'm an adult. You know, I think everybody feels that way. And I don't care how old you are. Watch your parents the next time you go to your grandparents' house. They will revert to childlike behaviors. We all do it. I
Yep.
go to my grandparents' house and I see my mom like do little things and kind of have this little kid energy, and it's so fun to watch. And it
Yeah.
also helps change your perspective of how you view your parents and how you interact with them. So thank you for bringing that up as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, my final question, the one we've all been waiting for. Another life form has come to Earth, and you're the first human they meet. What do they get about humanity because they've met you?
I think this is a multi-step process, or at least the way my brain has thought about it. Because I think they would understand curiosity, because I would ask them 1,000 questions. Mainly because I think my brain moves at
Yeah.
1,000 questions per minute. So they'd be like, man, this girl is very curious. Like, what is happening? And we've talked about curiosity before
Yeah.
already. So I think you kind of know where I'm going to be going with this, but it's the curiosity, but not the judgment. Because I think, you know, in this scenario, a different life form can come and we could be like, oh my God, like they're green, or they're a different color, or oh my God, what are you? Instead of saying, you know, where did you come from? How far did you travel? Are you tired? Do you feel emotions? Can you speak English? You know, all of these different questions we would have for this other life form that just landed. And then I think, again, this is something I'm working on, but it's when it has worked, it has brought me a lot of success. And this is the empathy of the understanding and sharing feelings and emotions. So it would be finding a connection with them. And I realize I do this, and sometimes it comes off in a bad way, but I let's say you shared a story, like let's say you were telling a story about your parents. Oh my God, my parents did this. In my brain, my mom, like I'm going, oh my God, I learned this about my mom the last time. And that could be perceived as, oh my God, all Kim does is talk about herself. But in my head, I'm going, look, I'm relatable. I have a story just like your story. Look. So I think in that way too, I've stopped in conversations before and go, I know I want to be relatable and I know I want to share these feelings, but how can I make sure that this is coming off as empathetic and not as self arrogance?
Mm.
So, and I don't think those are two things we would necessarily correlate with each other, but it's been a process. So um, I think those are the steps that would probably happen if this life form were to come. There would just be a lot of energy, to be honest.
Yeah. I love it. Yes. Hopefully they would not be introverted because if they met either one of us, they might be like, "Oh my gosh, this is a lot. Need to go
They
take a
would
nap
run.
right now." Wonderful to bring up the point of we often try to relate to other people by sharing our experience that's like theirs and maybe even sometimes unintentionally trying to top it, or that can be what it comes across as.
Mm-hmm.
This came up in Scott's PDP course at Leadership. Scott Moore, wonderful if you get an opportunity to take his PDP courses. They're really, really great. You're going to learn a lot of things about yourself that you may not have been aware of. And he encouraged everybody to ask only questions during the entire conference and not talk about themselves, and
Mm,
see how many conversations you can walk away from without answering anything about yourself as much as possible, right? You don't want to be rude and be like, why won't she answer my question? Because that's also weird.
yeah. Yeah.
But we're not trying to do that. But what we're trying to do is let people know that they are important to us and give them that respect. And so you will be the most interesting person in the room if you ask a lot of questions. So that curiosity, again, see how curiosity can become a limit and a serve. There's always two sides, two perspectives. And so it's really important that we understand that about ourselves and about others. So thank you very much, Kim. This has been so
Yeah.
much fun, so enlightening, and so inspiring.
Thank you. And I feel like every time I talk to you, you were one of these people where I feel energized and I walk away and I'm like, oh man, let's take on the world. What else can we accomplish today? So I want to
Yeah.
thank you for doing this and bringing on all of the amazing people you have and who you will bring on in the future. So thank you for adding me to that list.
Thank you so much, Kim. That's been my pleasure. If people would like to connect with you, what are the best places for them to do so?
I would definitely say LinkedIn. I know in the past I've been a little bit more of a social media guru on Instagram, and you are still more than welcome to follow me on Instagram. But if you were looking for aviation content, it will be limited. All of my aviation content will be on LinkedIn. Um, but yeah, I would say Instagram and LinkedIn are the places to be.
Okay, beautiful. Well, Kim, I look forward to seeing you in person hopefully soon here. I know you've got some really exciting things coming up with new type rating and different things going on in your world. I wish you all of the best with everything coming this
Thank
year.
you.
And I know that you wanted to talk a little bit about the event in June. So let's quickly let people know what that's about. And
Yeah,
then we'll sign off.
absolutely. Thank you. So I've talked a lot about the YoPro Council, and the YoPro Council is brought up into different subcommittees. So Julie and I actually are co-chairs for the advocacy subcommittee, and we are now in charge of planning this DC fly-in. So this is the first year we're opening it up to other YoPros, where you are allowed to apply to be selected to come with us to DC. So this is where we will advocate to senators and government representatives and have our voice be heard. And I know this sounds intimidating to go to DC and go to Capitol Hill and lobby for our industry, but we want to assure you that we will prepare you. There will be training videos. So if this in any way interests you, I want to urge you to apply. You can find the application on the mbaa.org website. You can also reach out to myself for more questions, but the application does close March 1st at midnight. So the end of this week, but you still have time. The application will take no more than an hour. So it's going to be a great event. And I think the importance of it is that even though as YoPros, as, up and coming industry professionals, that our voice does matter. And there are
Yes.
people in higher positions who could do something about it, who will listen to us. So it's going to be a great event. I'm so excited.
I love that. And I would absolutely have applied. I will be on my dive holiday though. So, I had to choose this time, but definitely in the future, I think this is a wonderful way. I've done a lot of advocacy work in my time in business aviation when I was in Hong Kong, in the Asia Pacific region. And it's really powerful when all these voices come together. So definitely please go and apply. And we'll see everyone soon on the next episode of The Lounge. Thank you, Kim, for being with me today.
Thank you.